Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I'm your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord and the lead mod at Reddit's r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, I'm a sake educator, as well as the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Well, hello, Tim.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm doing well, and I could not help but notice, but we have a guest with us today.
Yes, we do. We have a VIP. We're going to talk a little bit about the role of rice in sake, and I thought, who better than to have our local Toji? And we gave him a call, and he was so kind to meet with us today. Welcome back, Brandon Doughan, who is the co-founder and master brewer at Brooklyn Kura, out in Industry City in Sunset Park, Brooklyn. At that brewery, he focuses on brewing delicious Junmai and Junmai Ginjo sakes. He had a previous career as a research biochemist, but discovered his love for fermentation that led him to sake. So, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, no problem. I think this is your third time on. This might be a record. I don't know. Well, have you ever had anybody else 3 times?
We all live in the same town.
Yes.
We had Brandon on episode 28 and also for a cameo on our 100th episode.
Yes.
So we're so happy to have you back. Before we get into anything else, give us the latest update from Brooklyn Kura. What's happening out there at your brewery these days?
Yeah, sure. So as some may know, we have been involved in a project that started, during the pandemic, like a lot of projects. And we've been planning on building a larger facility, a larger brewery. And after a long look and a lot of planning, we were lucky enough to actually just move down the building we're already in Industry City. So Industry City, for people to know, is a really big complex. It's like 6 million square feet.
Mm.
And we were lucky enough to get just a great spot that's really conducive for brewing. And it was a lot of stress for the planning part about it and kind of waiting for things to get going. But now things have kicked off and there's like giant holes being dug and cement being poured, and electrical and plumbing lines being run. So it's been a long time, but we're really happy with the progress we're making now. We're looking forward to improving the quality of our sake and making a lot more.
That's fantastic. Great.
So I have to ask, I know it's always a moving target, but when can we plan to visit your brand new brewery when it's open and up and running?
Yeah, we're targeting this fall. I'll say that this fall. We're hoping before the end of the year. If you know how things arise. We'll see how it goes.
Let's hope for the best. I can't wait. So today, as Tim mentioned at the open here, we're talking about rice. We're talking about the role that rice plays in sake. I think that's something that we get a lot, and that is this like grapes and wine?
Yeah, to a degree, I guess you could say that. I mean, it's, I guess, the second biggest ingredient in sake after water.
Mm-hmm.
And, I should say that, my experience with rice and how it ends up affecting the sake is based on the American scene here. Mm-hmm. And the availability of sake rice or sake mai is very limited compared to Japan. A lot of breweries in Japan, they use rice strains that are available to everybody. They use special ones they grow themselves. Mm-hmm. They have sake mais that they've been developing for generations and trying to, get their house taste. So here in the States, we've got, just a handful of options. And there's just a couple spots in the United States where rice is really grown. Mm-hmm. But we're fortunate enough that because of the upswing interest in sake making outside of Japan and the United States, that there is also more pressure for people to grow more different strains of rice. Mm. So that said, two of the biggest rice strains that we use are calrose, which is I kind of think is becoming the American sake mai, and Yamada Nishiki, both grown in California and Arkansas. And those, I'll just talk about the differences in those two rice and what I think in general they bring to the taste of sake. Mm-hmm. Calrose is a food rice, so it's got a lot more flavor to it. It's got, I think, of the final sake, it's got more umami. It's got just a bigger taste, and compared to Yamada Nishiki, which tends to have a lighter profile. So I think if you get into tasting different sakes and you become aware of what rices are used to make them, you can start picking that out of the final sake.
Now, is calrose really considered an eating rice that started as that, or is it dedicated to sake in the States?
It started as an eating rice.
Okay.
Legend has it that its grandfather is a sake mai. I think it was a sake. Someone in the comments chime in, but my understanding is that it was a sake mai combined with a rice strain that was growing well in California, and then calrose is born out of that.
So that's a strain that was born in the U.S., may have some heritage from sake rice, but because of its availability and its workability, it's kind of turned into the default rice that most domestic brewers would start with or use as a foundation rice. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's fair to say. It's really cost effective for people, because Yamada is such a specialty rice. It's really just a handful of sake breweries. It's a bit of a premium for the price.
Yeah, I've been enjoying sake made in the States for about 18 years now, and I noticed a really sharp increase in quality when the Yamada Nishiki became available on the market for brewers to start working with. And it's really, I think, made a huge difference in the quality that can be produced. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, my understanding of sort of the impact on the brewing of different rice is, there's some things you want to avoid. It's okay to have protein. It's okay to have a big umami and a big taste. That's just a style of sake. Mm-hmm. It's great to have, nothing but pure starch shimpaku, the starchy center of Yamada Nishiki, and get a really clean taste. But one thing that doesn't go too well are the lipids or the fats in rice, right? So, my understanding is that food rices are meant to be flavorful. And so the lipids are part of that. The heavy proteins are part of that. So I think the advent of sake mai, or rice that was specifically developed for sake, is had a really positive impact on the American sake scene.
Nice. So as time has gone on, we've been seeing a few more varieties coming our way here in the States. And actually, one of the sakes we're going to be tasting today uses Jupiter rice. So I know that you've only messed with that a little bit, but what can you tell us about that?
So Jupiter rice is something that Isbell Farms in Arkansas has kind of leaned into, because they don't grow calrose out there, and they also want to offer a less expensive brewing rice. Mm-hmm. They're looking at a couple different, more inexpensive types of rice, and Jupiter is one of those.
In addition to Jupiter, Yamada Nishiki, and the calrose, I imagine if you imagine yourself to be a painter, and these are colors you can work with, are there any other colors coming down the pipeline that you are thinking about working with in the future beyond those three we've spoken of already?
Yeah, I'm very excited about omachi.
John is too.
So Isbell Farms has been growing omachi. And just so folks know, you can't just say, oh, this year I will grow this rice and have all the rice available. You have to start with the seed rice and get more seeds. You have to plant a whole field. And so that takes, years of development. So,
yeah.
So fortunately, Isbell Farms, started on that a while ago. And I know this season, they've, I think, dramatically increased their acreage of omachi. Mm-hmm. So I've already expressed interest in getting some of that from them.
Nice. So you mentioned it's a long process to kind of ramp up making a particular strain or a particular type. Does the quality change over time as well? Like, is it basically like the omachi that they're growing now, is it a higher quality than it was like 2 years ago because they've been at it longer?
Yeah, we just had a bunch of other American sake brewers here in New York for a couple of events. Mm-hmm. And that was a topic that we were talking about. And there's a big difference about how rice is grown in Japan and the United States, right? So the government is involved, both the federal government and the prefecture governments of Japan are heavily involved in agriculture. And I guess the cynical way to do it is they want to maximize their tax. So they want to make sure everybody is making a good product so it sells. So like, for instance, Yamada Nishiki, the seed tends to be handed out by some kind of central authority to the farmers every year. And what that does is that ensures that the variety doesn't float away from its original its original plant.
Mm-hmm.
But there's less of that control in the United States. So seed, as far as I know, and someone can maybe correct me, but seed is saved from harvest, and then that will be planted next year. So, there's less of a selective process to ensure that the rice doesn't float away from what was originally planted.
Okay.
I think, and that could be good and bad. Like I think the whole scene in the United States is like it's still in its infancy, and we're waiting to see how it evolves and how American sake is ultimately thought of around the world. And so those everybody's using the right strains grown here. So that's going to have a huge impact on what American sake becomes.
So we've got two sakes that we're going to be tasting. One is the Blue Door, which is one of your flagships, and for that you use calrose and Yamada in that one sake. So let us know exactly how do you divvy that up? What's that process look like?
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much always grow our koji, or kome koji, on Yamashiki. And the reason for that is making koji is very difficult and a difficult thing to learn. And, the resources that we have are some papers from Japan or books. And those are all based on a rice like Yamashiki. So I just made the decision early on. It's like, as I learn more and more about sake making, I'll probably start to change the ways that we make koji. But starting out, we were like, okay, let's just always grow. Let's just keep that variable the same and grow and get to know how to grow koji well on the same rice. So almost all of our batches start off with Yamada as the koji rice. So yeah, and the Blue Door, all the rest of the rice, the kakamai is calrose.
And then for the other one that we're going to be tasting today, Blue Door on Jupiter, this was a little bit of a one-off that you guys had done where you made Blue Door essentially, but with a different rice, with the Jupiter rice that you mentioned from Miss Bell Farms. And I imagine that in this case, it's replacing the calrose.
Yes.
Okay.
So I kept everything as the same as I could. So it's the same, it's this same ratio of koji, it's the same yeast, it's the same mizubuai or ratio of water, and same fermentation temperature. Doing that is a really good way to we just isolated one variable. So there's a lot of variation in our sake, even from the same batch to the same batch, because we're small. But I really wanted to see, okay, let's just do this, change this one thing and compare the outcomes.
That's something I found to be really fascinating. And it was one of the thoughts that Tim and I had when we were putting this episode together for today. And we rarely have situations where so many of the variables are the same across two different sakes with one change. And so I thought that would be a lot of fun to kind of compare and contrast and talk about. And then of course we have you here, which is even better.
Yeah, we rarely have the Toji on speed dial. So
rarely, very rarely. Yeah. Yes. So my understanding, what I've always heard from people is that calrose is a little bit weird sometimes. It takes a really, really long time to soak specifically. And did you find that when you moved on to the Jupiter, was that a similar experience, or were you oh, wait a minute, this is very different?
Yeah. So one of the biggest concerns and things you need to figure out when using a new rice is how long you soak it for, because we're aiming for a specific moisture content. So we wash the rice and then we put it into tubs of cold water, and we have kind of a countdown NASA clock on the wall, and we watch until we reach the time we've determined will give us the moisture content that we want. So calrose is a very hard rice, and it takes a long time for it to absorb water. And it has the longest soak time of any rice we use. And I also, all the calrose I get in is 50% milled, right? So there's a couple of reasons for that, because I know that it's got a lot of protein and I wanted to remove as much as I could, but also it's already a long soak time at 50% milled. If we were using 70%, it would be even longer. I've heard stories of Tojis in Japan who've used only 90% milled rice of a particular kind that's very hard, and they go out in the middle of the night and change the water and keep soaking it. They just keep soaking it for hours. So at 50%, we're almost at 40 minutes for calrose. So to finish your question here, so Jupiter, we got that rice in, and the first thing we did was we did soak trials. We took a reasonable amount that we could still measure without too much error of the weight of it, and we soaked some for 5, some for 10, some for 15 minutes, and so on, and determine what soak time would get us our weight. So it was, I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but it was significantly shorter than calrose. So that tells me maybe it's softer rice.
So we have these two sakes we're going to taste side by side with the Toji, John. We have the Blue Door Junmai, which is a Nama sake, unpasteurized, and we have the Blue Door on Jupiter, which I at first thought was one of those space sakes that they sent up, but it's a different Jupiter. All right. So why don't we pour the Blue Door Junmai Namazake, the foundation sake from Brooklyn Kura, and give that a taste first.
Sounds good.
All right. So let's get this open. All right, John. So this is a sake that you and I know very well from our many trips to Brooklyn Kura. Yes. So there's lovely fruity notes on the aroma. Brandon, how do you describe this sake to people who are tasting Blue Door for the first time?
Yeah, so our two flagship Nama-Namas are Blue Door Junmai, and then number 14, which is a Junmai Ginjo. And the thing I've been trying to develop with both of those in all our sakes is really to show people that there's variety in sake, and that, I want people to come into the tap room and see the different taps and think of it. Oh, I could have a white wine, a rosé, or merlot, or like a pilsner or a stout, and just that there's a range. It's not just one thing. Mm-hmm. So that said, I do try and make the Blue Door a little heavier, a little bigger. It's got a bit more alcohol in it. I try and get it drier than 14. So 14 is a little softer, I think. It's got more Yamada in it, and a little bit more Mizuruai. And even the ratio of koji in both of those is a little different. So I'm just trying to drive like a bigger with Blue Door and a lighter with 14.
I spent a lot of my earlier Brooklyn Kura experiences being a staunch number 14 guy. But in recent years, I've kind of I really warmed up to Blue Door.
I think they've both gone through a lot of changes. One thing we decided early on is we were going to be a brand new sake brewery and be like, this is our house style, after a thing that takes generations for other breweries to get to. So we allow ourselves changes and stuff, but both of those now are pretty dialed in.
Yeah.
Yeah, but focusing on the Blue Door Junmai specifically now, I find that there is a gentle fruitiness to the aroma, but there's also a rice component in the background. And when I take a sip, it has structure and a little bit of that bolder flavor you were talking about. It has a little bit more presence. And you can also sense that it's a Nama. It has a little zip and a little zing to it as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think maybe you won't find as much fruity aroma in a pasteurized Junmai, but I think you do get some of that in this Junmai because it is unpasteurized. Yeah.
Do you have any favorite things that you like to pair with your standard Blue Door Junmai?
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't like to tell people what to pair things with, but just because it is a little bit bigger, it's got a little higher alcohol. I think it's easier to mix with bigger foods.
Oh yeah.
With steak or things that might have some spice in it, because it can kind of keep pace with it a little bit more than maybe Junmai Ginjo, which you might lose some of its nuance.
I would love to have a Blue Door with steak. That's a solid combination.
Yeah, I think so too. And I agree with you, Brandon. I mean, we talk about food pairings all the time, and we don't do it in the spirit of here's what matches perfectly and will change your life if you eat this and drink this. But I think when it comes to sake and non-Japanese food, sometimes people just want a starting point, jumping off point. Like, what do you enjoy with this? And I'll give that a try, and maybe I'll find something else. But I find it helpful to give people just a handle to grab onto and someplace to get started with pairings. So that's a super yummy suggestion. Just a simple steak, maybe steak frit. I can have French fries with just about anything.
I mean, there's French fries pair with everything. So that's
yes, they do. It's a proven fact. All right, now I think the moment of truth has come.
Yes.
So we have this Blue Door on Jupiter. This was a special release, and this is no longer available in the tap room, correct?
Yeah. So currently we have our larger tanks that we do most of our brewing on, but we also have a couple of smaller tanks. And what we do is we experiment, we try and refine different things we're working on in those tanks. And the result frequently goes into our sake subscriber club, our Kura We.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, because it's not a lot of yield, and it kind of works out well to just sell it in the tap room and to our subscribers.
Well, if people are interested in getting into this insider club and becoming a subscriber, what do people need to do to sign up for Kura We?
They need to go to brooklynkura.com and click on the Kura We membership area.
Awesome.
See, he does sales and
sales and brewing. Great. Well, I think if people are interested in these smaller batch releases from Brooklyn Kura, it's a wonderful reason to join the Kura We subscription. So, John, should we get this in the glass and taste this with Brandon?
Let's do that. There we go.
Okay. I have my first observation. The aroma is very different. It's much more restrained and quiet on the Jupiter version of the Blue Door, and the calrose version of the Blue Door has, in my assessment, it has more pronounced fruit aromas.
Yes, there's definitely more fruit on the Blue Door.
Yeah,
I really like this Jupiter aroma though. It's nice. It is different. I think the rice maybe comes through a little bit more.
Giving it a taste, the Jupiter version of the Blue Door has a little bit of a richer texture for me, and it's overall just a little more subtle in all the aspects of it. The traditional Blue Door is a little more bold across the board, and this is a little more quiet, restrained, rounded, very elegant.
I think for me, when I tasted it just now, the very first thing I noticed was like how very different the texture is.
Right.
Like I was like, whoa, like this is very, very different. And it really stands on its own. It's we made one change, that being the rice type. And it's a completely different product in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It really stands on its own as a separate sake.
Brandon, I don't know if you agree with my tasting assessment here that the traditional Blue Door is a little bit more fruit forward than this one, but for me, it's pretty striking that this is much cleaner. The Jupiter is a little cleaner and more rounded, and it's very well integrated as well. But it's just a little crisper and cleaner overall.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely noticeable differences between those two. You know, and I do think we can put a lot of that on the different rice. You know, but it's difficult to really get a full assessment of what's going on just having done this once, when there's so many variables in making sake. And the fact that we are, you know, pretty small scale, and you know, things like the decision when to press is like, well, we're bottling today, so maybe we're not going to be pressing today, so things will have some other variation on it, but I think you can get a pretty good idea that that they are different.
Yeah, they are very different. It's so interesting to me that it's just, again, like, you know, obviously there are other variables in play, but your big variables are your water, your rice, your timing, your temperature, and, you know, keeping all these things equal and then changing out the rice gives you such a different sake.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really striking and very fun. And I think it's one of the advantages we have that, John, you and I are so lucky to have a great brewery like Brooklyn Kura in our backyard, because we can go to the tap room and experience these sakes pretty easily. And that is just, I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah. And Brandon, you had mentioned that you guys have the smaller tanks that you can experiment with a little bit. And for me, you know, as the consumer, that's a lot of fun, because it's nice to see what you guys get to do. And the idea that the tap room and the subscription affords you the opportunity to kind of, all right, we're gonna do something a little different. We're gonna do something a little weird and see what happens. I assume you guys then take that feedback you get and that informs future products and things of that nature.
Yeah, definitely. You know, people are very excited about something. There's a good chance that it's going to move from a small tank to a big tank and get and become a thing. And a few of our sakes that we make on a regular basis now did start their life up there.
Do you have any that you're a particular fan of that made their way from the small batch?
It hasn't made its way from the small batch yet, but like as far as playing with variables and things you can change, another variable is our water. And here in Brooklyn, we have stellar water we steal from upstate. And it's very soft. It's got a really light profile. So recently we decided to play with the mineral structure of the initial brewing water. And for that, I looked to beer because there's different kinds of water profiles around the world are known for beer. And the hardest is in England. It's an area called Burton-upon-Trent. And there's a mild ale made there, a Burton ale, that its flavor is heavily affected by the hardness of the water. So in the beer brewing world, you can just buy the right ratio of salts and minerals to adjust your water and do a little math and mimic that water. So we did do a small batch of that. I believe it's still available in the tap room, but and I think you've had it as well, John. But
oh, yes.
It has a big impact on the mouthfeel and the texture of it.
That is a fun sake.
Yeah. But those small tanks are perfect for changing a variable, right? To keep everything the same, but change the rice, change the yeast, change the amount of koji that goes into it, or the kind of koji. So it's fun. It's good learning for us.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, this was fantastic. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us today, for enlightening us on the role that rice plays in sake, and also for giving us a window into the situation that American brewers are facing with the development of new rices and what's coming down the pipeline. Super interesting, and we're so happy to learn about that from you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, but always a pleasure to talk to you, Bo.
Yeah. Now, Brandon, you are going to be joining us for an upcoming special event as well. John and I will be seeing you at the American Craft Sake Festival, which is going to be held on July 22nd in Charlottesville, Virginia. And we will be live podcasting from the festival, and Brooklyn Kura will be well represented. And Brandon, I believe you'll be there as well.
I will.
Awesome.
So we'll be on for the record-breaking fourth.
As long as I get residuals.
So if you would like to join myself, John Puma, and Brandon Doughan from Brooklyn Kura, if you would like to join us at the American Craft Sake Festival, there's still time to get tickets. Visit sakeassociation.org and get your tickets now. Again, it's in Charlottesville, Virginia, and we can't wait to see you there. We hope you join us.
We're hoping to run into as many listeners as possible. I think that we want to get a couple of them at the table, maybe, talk about what's your favorite sake that you had while you're there, things like that. I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you enjoyed our episode today, as I sure did talking to Brandon. If you would like to support our show, there's a wonderful way you can help us out. We have a group of patrons who support us, and you can join us at patreon.com/sakerevolution to learn more.
And don't forget that we have a wonderful website over at sakerevolution.com, where we've got the show notes for every episode, a transcript that Tim painstakingly puts together, as well as a link to our swag shop. We've got some shirts, we've got some stickers, we've got new shirts. You should go check them out even if you've been there before. So, without any further ado, please raise a glass. Remember to keep drinking sake, and Kanpai.